Okay, if you could put the presentation up, Katie, and Katie's going to be very kindly volunteered to change the slides for me. So occasionally I'll ask her to move on. And so Katie, if you could move on, and I'll talk to the next slide. Thank you. So hello again, everyone, and it's absolutely thrilling to have so many people online, and particularly so many people from around the world. As Katie said, I'm Estelle Clark. I am the Chief Judge for the International Quality Awards 2022, and in fact, I've been the Chief Judge for the International Quality Awards every year since they started, and as part of the a member of the Chartered Quality Institute's executive, and as the head of profession, I was the person who designed the award process. So you can either thank me or blame me for everything that I'm about to speak about. And I have a long history in relation to quality awards, not only as a judge, where I've judged both the British Quality Awards, the EFQM European Foundation for Quality Management European Quality Award, the Caterva Global Awards, and the IQPC Awards. But I've also entered for many, and have managed to be a finalist and winner on a couple of occasions. So I really like the whole concept of quality awards, and have spent a large part of my career in quality being involved with them. So my role as Chief Judge is that I appoint and train the category judges. So the 18 judges that we have in the categories that I'm talking about today are all people who I've found and appointed and trained. I oversee the entirety of the judging process, make sure that it operates according to the designed process, that it's fair, that it's equitable, and that there are no issues. And if there are any things that need to be resolved, any judges who need to stand down for various reasons like conflict of interest, then I'm available to find another judge or else to step in myself. And we have had to do that on various occasions when people have been ill. So I oversee the entirety of the judging process. I get involved in all of the interviews in relation to finalists and the selection of the winners for each of the categories. I'm there at the ceremony, so to meet a number of you there. I write the feedback to entrants, and I'll talk more about that later on in the webinar. And I also write the case studies in relation to the finalists. So my job in relation to the 2022 Quality Awards started way back in November with the identification of judges, all of whom have been in place for a long period of time, and goes on a couple of months beyond the end of the ceremony in relation to the case studies and all of the feedback and learning and tidying up. So it feels like a whole year's worth of activity. So the purpose of this webinar is to hopefully persuade you to apply. I tell you why I think it's a good idea to apply, and to make sure that you're comfortable with the application process, understand exactly what it is that you need to do. And as Katie said, there will be a lot of time for questions. And if you have any questions about anything that's different than the things that we put into the agenda, as long as there is something to do with the awards, then I'm very happy to pick up on anything. Next slide, please. So the structure of the webinar is that I'm going to basically follow the sequence that you can see on the slide now in terms of the agenda. So first of all, we'll talk about the benefits of entering the awards, the entry process, what it is that you have to do, the judging process, what it is that happens on the other side, if you like, with the judges, what the judges are going to be looking for. And I think that this is probably something that you will find interesting, particularly interesting, is how does a judge identify a really great entry from an okay entry? So we'll look at that. We're going to look at what happens after you've entered, and what happens particularly if you're a finalist, and that part of the process. And then I'm going to look at which award is right for you. And of course, it's totally possible for an individual and an organization to enter a number of categories. So which awards are right for you, and how do you make that decision? Next slide, please. So just starting off with the agenda, what are the benefits? And I'm going to go through each of these boxes, starting with the one on the top left. So this is one that I want to highlight because it's possibly one that that you may not be thinking is particularly useful, but just the ability, the opportunity to write down what it is that you do, or your team does, or your organization does in relation to delivering quality product and service. And I know at many points in time in my career, I haven't been very good at being able to articulate that. If my boss asked, or my colleagues asked, or my mum asked, I would find it really difficult to explain what I do. And the opportunity to write it down, and to write it down in a structured way, and for a number of the awards, 3 of the awards, against the competency framework, is just really, really helpful. It's a great way of being able to sort of update your CV, be able to update your LinkedIn profile with a better understanding of what you do and why you do it, and what the impact is of what you do and why you do it. So I don't want to underestimate having the opportunity, and hopefully an opportunity supported by your company, of giving you time to just step aside from the day job for a day or two and write it down. I'm now moving to the bottom left-hand segment here, which is that you get feedback from quality experts. So we put together the judging panels for each of the categories. There are 3 judges in each panel for the offline judging. I'll explain more about that at the moment. Judging your entry, 4 judges during the interview process. And so everyone who enters gets some feedback. Now, we are expecting to have way in excess of 100 entries, and have always had that. So it's not the case that you're going to get personalized feedback, but you will get feedback based on views of all of the judges about the general things that they thought were good, and the general things that they thought were missing, or opportunities for improvement. And if you are lucky enough, or good enough to be a finalist, then you will get personalized feedback based on your specific entry, again with identification from the judges who viewed your application and the judges who heard your interview as to what it was that stood out as being really good and what it was that was missing. And now it may be that those missings are actually things that you do, but they were things that the judges didn't see. And therefore, it's useful to know what comes across well and what doesn't come across. Turning to the top right-hand segment here, we've had many, many instances where people who have entered for the awards one year have re-entered on the subsequent year and done better. So I can trace applications from individuals and companies who haven't been placed in one year, who've been a finalist at a subsequent year, and who've won on a 3rd occasion. And a number of those people have said to me that what they've done between the years is that they have taken note of the feedback that they had from the experts, and they have put in place the things that were either missing or didn't come across very strongly. So it's quite possible to use this process to help you improve your own personal to help you with your own personal development needs, but equally for your quality team or for your organization to identify some things that would be useful to your team and your business to implement for the benefit of your business. And under other circumstances, you'd pay for this, to have that appraisal from experts. Consultancy effectively would cost. And I don't think that this point should be underestimated. All feedback is useful feedback. And finally, you get recognition. So I think that everyone gets recognition, even if you're not successful in becoming a finalist. I think you get recognition from your company for having taken the time to enter, for having been bold enough to enter, and for being able to be clear about what it is that you do. But clearly, if you become a finalist or you become a winner, then the recognition is significant. And we've had a number of people for whom that recognition has made a very big difference to their career. And I'll talk more about that later on. Next slide, please. So the process of entering. So as an individual or a person leading a team entry or a person leading an organization entry, this is basically what you need to do. And you'll see that there are 7 points here, and I'll talk through them one by one. So first of all, review the criteria for each of the categories, because it's those criteria that the judges will be using in order to evaluate which of the entries are suitable to become finalists, and ultimately which of the finalists become winners. We will score according to those criteria, and we won't be awarding points for things that are outside of those criteria. And therefore we expect to see those criteria covered. And consequently, if you feel that you're not going to be able to cover everything, you need to think as to consider whether or not that category is right for you. So having reviewed the criteria for the various categories, you can then select the category or categories that you want to enter. And as I've said, and as Katie said, you can enter more than one category. And we have had instances where organizations have entered and with a team and with a project and with an individual, and that's perfectly okay. But what I would recommend is that you discuss this with your manager or whomever is responsible for making the decision as to which categories, which entries an organization is going to make this year. I think you don't want to find that you want to enter Quality Professional of the Year and someone in another department in the same company also wants to enter Quality Professional of the Year, unless that is something that you are aware of. I don't think you want to find that out by accident. It is okay for there to be more than one entry by an organization for individuals within a category. But what we don't want to have is 12 emerging talents from one company. It looks like you can't make your own mind up as to whom is best. If you're thinking of entering more than one category, you also need to consider, is this the same context or a different context? And it's okay either way, but it needs to be clear to the judges, and particularly clear to me, if you find you're telling a different story. So if you're entering Quality Organisation of the Year and you have also entering Quality Professional of the Year, it needs to feel as if the quality professional could be part of that quality system that's the bigger picture, because otherwise it just poses questions as to the integrity of what it is that we're looking at. So I do think that selecting the category or category needs to be an organized activity and a conscious decision where you know the entirety of what's going to be entered for your company. So once you've made the decision, then you are going to, I suggest, compile your evidence. For each of the categories, 50% of the marks are given to the evidence that you provide, and 50% of the marks are given to the approach that you describe. And clearly the evidence needs to relate to the approach. We need to be able to see that what you're showing us as results is due to the approach that you've chosen, and not something that's accidental or something that is completely different. So take some time to compile that evidence. It's 50% of the marks. And then use the portal, which I'll show and talk about in a moment, to upload to make your entry. And you will be able to re-access the portal over a number of different sessions so that you can complete your entry over a period of time. It doesn't all need to be ready on the same day. Once all the entries are in, and I'll talk more about the judging process in a moment, then the judges will do their marking, and we will determine who are the finalists for each of the categories, and we will let you know. If you're not a finalist, you will receive better feedback with the hope that you can submit a better entry in 2020, 2023. And as I said earlier, people do find this feedback useful. But if you are a finalist, we will invite you to an online interview, and I'll talk more about that in a moment as well. Next slide, please. So this is a screenshot from the start point of the entry process on our awards platform. And the award platform that we're using is a world-class industry standard platform tailored for our needs. We've used it now for a number of years. You should find it very supportive of helping you through the process. It will make sure that you don't miss things out and remind you of things that you need. It's also, of course, the process that's used by the judges. So once you've completed your applications and upon the closure of the entry period, then the judges will be using this same platform with a slightly different looking screen in order to award apportion points to the various elements, criteria of each of the entries for each of the awards. We found that people find this easy, but if you have any issues with it whilst you're making your entry, then obviously please tell the CQI and we'll help you. The last thing that we want is that people are sort of to this point of having gathered all of their information and then find that they can't finish their application because of something that's not clear to them on the platform. So please don't let this get in your way. Next slide, please. So the process of judging, so the bit that you won't have read about quite so much detail elsewhere. So as I said earlier, we start with a panel of 3 judges per category, where at least 2 of the judges out of the 3 are subject matter experts. All 3 of the judges will be quality experts, but 2 will be experts in the specific element that we're looking for. All of the judges were in place and inducted before Christmas. No difficulty with recruitment. Judges love this. And so I usually find that judges from one year are very happy to come back. But equally, I like to have some new judges each year. And one of the things that we try to do is to make sure that we include winners from previous years, so that we're continually updating the judges in relation to sort of recent best practice. But judges tend to be previous winners, quality directors of significant organizations and heads of significant quality consultancies. Each of the categories has a lead judge for each of the award categories, and those lead judges have all judged previously. So in each of the categories, emerging talent, quality professional, etc., we've got at least 2 subject matter experts and at least one person who's been there before and who knows how this works. So once the entry period closes and we say no more applications, and then we set up awards force so that each of the judges can just see the entries that they individually need to mark. We don't start marking until everything is finished. We don't think that is good practice. We wait until we have the complete set. So the judges score individually. They are not in contact with each other whilst they each mark each of the entries according to the criteria and using the marking schema. Once they have finished marking all of the entries in their category, then the judges get together for a consensus meeting. We look at the top half a dozen or so highest marked entries by each of the judges, and we see whether those are common. If everybody, all of the panels, likes the same entries, then it's fairly easy to make the decision about the finalists. If there's some difference, then we will ask judges to go back and remark, having had a discussion and understood what it is that their colleague judges like or don't like in each entry. So we talk about it in consensus until we reach consensus about the number of finalists that we want. We select between 2 and 4. The decision about how many, whether it's 2 or 4, is partly dependent upon the number of entries, but it's also dependent upon how close the scores are. So if we have 4 entries and they're all 1 or 2 marks apart, it doesn't seem fair to me that we make a sort of arbitrary decision that 3 are in and 1 is out. And so the closer that the entries are in the marking, the more it's likely that I'm going to say, okay, we will squeeze an extra 1 in. Personally, I like to try for 3, but 2 or 4 are okay. And then once we've identified the finalists, informed the finalists that they are a finalist, the CQI will be setting up interviews. The interviews will be online, so there's no difficulty for those people who are entering from outside of the UK. The panel for the interviews comprises the same 3 judges that would have done the marking of the initial applications, and I will also join at this stage to make sure that I participate in interviews on all 6 of the categories. So I've seen all the finalists. As I said earlier, I need to write the case studies, so I need to hear everyone's story. The purpose of the interview is to verify what it is that's in the application and to allow the judges to ask any questions about that. So the interview is on the same material. The interview isn't an opportunity to give a different story. It's the same story. And the interviews can be attended by more than 1 person. If it's an individual award, then it needs to be 1 person, but for team or sustainability, digital impact, and for quality organisation of the year, then it's perfectly acceptable to send a handful of people to participate in the interview, and indeed we like that. And then at the end of all of the interviews on each category, the judges will have a conversation. We will update our scoring, and we will make a decision on the winner. And then, of course, we don't tell anybody, and we have to wait to the ceremony until that information is shared. Next slide, please. So what the judges are looking for. So obviously what we're looking for is that your entry answers covers all the criteria and answers all the questions. I think that's quite clear, and the awards platform will sort of enforce this to a degree. But I have had entries where people have said, after 3 of the 5 questions, I think I've made my point. I don't see the need to write any more. Well, if we're judging and giving 20 points to each of 5 questions and you only answer 3 questions, you're never going to be able to get more than 60% of the marks, and finalists will be getting way more than 60 out of 100 marks. And so it is important to answer all of the questions. You need to work out your red thread. We're looking for a coherent story, not 5 separate small stories. So to just by way of example, using those categories that are judged according to the competency framework. So for emerging talent, quality professional, quality team, what we're looking for is for you to explain the context of the organisation and therefore the organisation strategy. And then to let us know why the quality governance in place is supportive of the achievement of that strategy, and how the quality assurance processes you have in place ensure that that governance can be effective in support of that strategy. And then how the improvement activities that you have in place apply in those circumstances when the assurance indicates that an improvement is necessary in order to ensure that the governance works in support of the strategy within that context, so that it all hangs together and we can see why you're doing things. It's not great for marks in the judging process if it looks like what you're telling us is arbitrary or random and we don't understand why. Even if we think it sounds good, but we don't understand why, it's not going to get the full marks. And so think about the balance between the questions, answer them all, but within that, think about how you allocate your text. you've got a certain number of words that you can give us. Different ones for different categories, or quality organisation is different. You have more words, but all questions have 10 points for the approach and 10 points for the results. So it's probably not a great idea to use 50% of your words on one of the questions. And it's all right to sort of balance this, to have some bit bigger than the others, but just think about how you make sure that each of the questions has got its chance of getting its 20 points. Make sure that you have evidence for everything in your approach. It would be a good idea if you have evidence as to why your governance works and why it was chosen, that you have evidence for your assurance, that you have evidence for your improvement, that in digital context you have evidence as to why the digital solution you chose was the right one. And so that the evidence relates back to the approach, and there's evidence for all pieces of the approach, and not just evidence for one piece of the approach or one output measure, as opposed to within process measures. I was asked to speak to the next point at a bit of length in relation to the slides, and I want to do this because I frequently see the slides used poorly. So we've given you the opportunity for 6 slides for most of the categories. There are 5 questions to answer, and I think it would make sense to use 1 slide for each of the categories, and it can help you provide a picture or a graph or something that makes your text easier to understand. So within context, people sometimes take sort of 300 or 400 words explaining how their role fits into the organization. Well, put an organization chart on a slide and just refer to it. If you're talking about evidence and saying that your results have improved, put a graph on the slide in relation to how your assurance has improved. And then make sure for each of the slides that we know when, for the judges, we know when we're supposed to read it. Sometimes there's a pack of 6 slides, and when I look at the words, I can't relate the words to the slides. I don't know which slide I'm supposed to look at when. So signpost the use of the slides so that the judges know which one they look at when, and that you absolutely make sure that the slides give you more points. So I've seen an entry where all 6 slides were a photograph of the person who was entering. And that's very nice because I would be able to recognize them at the awards event, but it's unlikely that that's going to mean that a judge ups their marks. And that's really what you want the slides to do. They're there to help you increase your, get an improvement in the scoring, because they explain better than the text does what it is that's going on. And then the final thing is consistency in your approach, that at the interviews, we will be looking at what you tell us there verifies what you put in your submission and shouldn't be a different story. Next slide, please. Moving fairly swiftly on, this is what happens if you're a finalist. You're invited to the interview. I've said you can include other people there. Your name will be mentioned at the awards ceremony. In many places, it's going to be on the awards brochure. It's going to be on the CQI website. It's usually on the menu. If you win, we will invite you to collect your award on the main stage. And if you're unable to attend, we'll give you the opportunity to be online to collect it digitally, if you like. We may interview you at the awards event. Certainly everyone there is going to be interested to talk to you. You're very likely to be profiled in a case study. And as I said, you will receive personalized feedback from the judges that I will compile, taking input from all of them and also from myself. Next slide, please. So the categories. There are 3 awards that are based on the competency framework: emerging talent, quality professional, and quality team. I've talked a little bit about these as I've been going through my presentation. So the criteria are identical to the competency framework. The difference between the 3 awards: emerging talent, someone younger in their career, someone who's been in post less long, where we would expect that the decisions as to the governance system in place, the assurance system in place, and the improvement system in place were probably not made by the person entering. They would be made by somebody more senior in the organization, but we're interested in how you play your role in relation to the piece that you're responsible for within that. But when it comes to quality professional, we're expecting that some or all of the elements of the management system, of the quality system, will have been put in place by you. And therefore, we're going to be looking at it with that sort of different lens in our glasses. And then quality team of the year, what we're looking for there is how the team work together. We want to know who are the team, who's in it, what their roles are, how together you work to ensure that the quality system works for the benefit of your organization. We have one award based on an international standard, and that's Quality Organisation of the Year. That award has been in place for a number of years, no change to the criteria. I recommend that anyone entering for that has read ISO 9004, because the judges are all 9004 experts and will be bearing in mind that the whole of the standard. But the pieces I would emphasize and make sure you define what is included in your organization. Some entries are quite specific, that it's the people who are paid for receiving salary. Other people define a wider infrastructure with their supply chain and their customers, maybe some of their regulatory bodies. So we need to know that context. Because it's that context which will help us understand whether or not the systems that you have in place we think are appropriate and working, and make sure that that your entry includes culture and not just processes and procedures. This is about how an organization lives and breathes quality, not an organization that just follows the written rules. And then we have 2 new awards this year: Digital Innovation and Sustainability Impact. And those awards replace a more general Innovation Award or Improvement Award that we've had on previous occasions. And what we found is that in previous years, we've had a number of finalists and winners of the Innovation or Improvement Awards that have been talking about digital improvement or innovation. And we wanted to carve out a space for those entries and to ensure that we have a winner in the digital space, and to make sure that we understand that there are roles for quality professionals in relation to digital solutions. So what we're looking for there is how the selection of technology happened in relation to delivering the quality outcome, and how your quality process was followed throughout. We've also had a number of entries of innovation and improvement that have been about sustainability, and therefore we wanted to carve out that space for that too. And here we're particularly interested in how quality management was applied to ensuring that there is a systematic approach to sustainability, and particularly out of the plethora of information that's available or that could be included in sustainability, how you determine what is most important. And we've also chosen those 2 awards because those sustainability and digital are key elements of Quality 4.0, which you will increasingly hear the Charter Quality Institute be talking about. And then the final piece is, we will receive a number of really credible entries. And sometimes we are making decisions between 6, 8 entries, all of whom are brilliant. They're all brilliant in their own way. And what makes one stand out from the other is the magic dust. It's the thing that makes all the judges smile and our heart lift. And that's it. I haven't thought of it this way before. I've learned something from this. I want everyone to hear this story. And so just at the end of your entry, we're just like, make sure that you've got your magic dust in there. Next slide, please. And then, so getting to the end of my presentation, the event. So here's the date for your diaries. The This is British summertime. I think that's right. The 23rd of June, back in central London, and back as a face-to-face event, although there will be an opportunity for people to join digitally as well. You'll notice that it's 6 hours. That's not because we're having a longer lunch. It's because we're having a conference preceding the awards themselves. And so very exciting that we have a new way of delivering the awards event this year. For those of you who will be lucky enough to attend, you can obviously meet your fellow entrants, you can meet your fellow finalists, you can say hello to all of the judges, you'll be able to meet the members of the CQI, and you'll also be able to meet our headline sponsors, LRQA, and obviously have a huge amount of fun. And I frankly can't wait to be there and get my party dress out again. So next slide. And I think we're on to questions, aren't we? So I will answer as many as I can up to the end of the webinar. Anything that remain that we haven't had a chance to any that we haven't had a chance to answer, we'll make sure that we get back to you either by putting them as general answers on the awards portal, or back to you individually if it's something that's very specific to you.
Okay, I will keep my camera off just for the benefit of keeping the sound quality as good as possible. So we have had a few questions in. If you do have questions, pop them in the Q&A box and we'll try and get through as many as possible. One question that we've had, Estelle, is in relation to the slides which broke down the categories, which is, what does CGAIL stand for, please? Okay,
so CGAIL are the 5 aspects of the CQI's competency framework. So that's context, governance, assurance, improvement, and leadership. And for the 3 categories, emerging talent, quality professional of the year, and quality team, those will be the 5 criteria that we're looking to have covered. And you can find more out about the competency framework on the CQI website.
Another question that's come through, which I wonder if you could just touch upon very briefly, Estelle, is that somebody's very rightly pointed out that we've only spoken about 6 categories here today, but there are actually 8 listed on the CQI website. I don't know if you wanted to just cover that, or if you'd like me to cover the other 2.
Well, I'll cover it for 10 seconds and then pass back to you. So the judging process that I've outlined and the process that I've outlined applies to the 6 categories I've talked about. The volunteer of the year and the contribution to quality management practice, there is a different process in place and different criteria in place. And I think yes, best you talk to that, Katie.
Yeah, so the other 2 categories are categories which are judged by the CQI, by internal panels. So the outstanding contribution to quality management practice is judged, it's not open to submissions, it's something that will be judged by an internal panel of experts. And then the other category listed on the website is the CQI Volunteer of the Year, which can be applied for in the same using the same platform, which is the Award Force platform that Estelle's spoken about, but again it's a slightly different process, as it's kind of a summarizing statement about your role volunteering with either the CQI or IRCA, so it's a slightly different process, which is why we haven't covered that in this.
Yes, and obviously only open to CQI volunteers, as opposed to the awards that I've been talking about, where most of them are available open to all anybody.
One question we've had about the slide, in fact a couple of questions about the slides, one which has come up quite a few times is about whether or not you'd like a covering style document in the attachments, explaining more about the company team. I know you touched upon an organisational chart, but how much more information would you like about the kind of overall?
No, that's a very good question, and I'm pleased to answer that, because I should have probably clarified that earlier, which is that quite often people put in place an entry and make an over assumption as to the likelihood that the judges will understand the context. And so quite often people will say something like, we operate within the standard regulatory framework of the nuclear industry. And then assume that all judges really understand absolutely what that means. We may, you may have a judge who's been in your sector, but you may not. So if there's something about your context that is important for the judges to understand, to enable us to be able to score all of the criteria, then you need to tell us what that is. And I find that we are usually a little bit light in the amount of input that's been given about the company. And so using a slide that has maybe the organization chart, but also the company's strategic objectives or its mission or something like that would be really, really helpful. But I wouldn't use all the slides for that. And sometimes people have given me the marketing presentation on the strategy, something you would use to a potential client. And I've really found it quite difficult to get to the meat. And we need the meat and not the fluff around that. But yes, that would be a useful thing to put on a slide, I suspect.
Great. Lots of questions coming through, several of them just about the sharing of these slides and the webinar, and we will of course share the presentation and the webinar with everybody later on this week, so we'll be able to share that. We'll make that available to everybody, so don't worry about that if you want to kind of go back over any points there. One question about the Sustainability Impact Award. Would we be able to put a team forward for that award?
Yes, absolutely. For sustainability impact and for digital innovation, what we're looking for is the sustainability impact and the digital innovation. And then therefore that could have been involving one person, a team of people, or everyone in the company. And it's entirely your choice how you frame, how you define that impact. But I had imagined it would be more than one person. So please feel free to do that.
And Estelle, how many years of results data for the evidence that people supply on
question.
The
yeah, so I mean, as I guess I would say as many as you can, or as many as you feel you need in order that we have confidence in the risk that you have. Now, clearly, in place for very long, and if we're looking at it, may be that you're talking about improvement out. I think particularly in those innovation circumstances, we couldn't necessarily expect more. But what is nice is seeing quite a lot of data in relation to how you made the decision, the data that indicated that there was an issue or an opportunity that you wanted to solve by the change, so that we can at least track through that there's some rationale and it looks like it's going in the right direction. It's the single thing that I allowed different in an interview from the original application, is that we do say to people who come to the interview, if you provided us data previously and you have another quarter's worth, then just bring just give us the up-to-date data, because it's still giving me the same story. It's just bringing it up to date for me. So I think Organisation of the Year, Quality Organisation of the Year, I would expect to see more data than I would in digital or sustainable categories where it's more project and therefore less likely that you'd have lots of data yet. But there's no precise rule on this, because it depends on the context of what you're trying to tell us, and we won't penalise if there isn't a lot of data if it's because hasn't been available. But I have said to people previously, don't come with no data. Don't say I implemented this yesterday. Enter that one next year.
A question about the Quality Professional of the Year award. Is it okay for us to submit a Quality Professional of the Year award for an organisation we worked with in 2021, but we don't work with now?
Well, the Quality Professional of the Year is about the individual. It's not about the company they work for. And so if you want to enter based on a story that stopped a year ago and with what you put in place in a previous company, that's okay. I think you would need to say in the context that you have moved and it's too early to enter in relation to the new company. It's fine. Just make sure we understand that there is a difference between who you work for now and the majority of your story. But as I said, the story is about the individual, not about the company.
Lovely, thank you. I can see there's somebody that's raising their hand. If you can just pop the question in the Q&A and we will come to it as soon as we can. We have a few more questions, so hopefully we should be able to get through a few more. We've touched upon this briefly, but the 6 slides, again, would you like a main cover or title slide included with that, Estelle?
Your choice. I wouldn't. I wouldn't, because it just uses a slide for no reason. So I'd make your first slide a slide with some substance on it. And as I said, just make sure that the slides are related, you relate to the slide, you refer to the slide in the text that you give us.
And just based on the quality, the fact that obviously this is an international audience and their international awards, we have had a query just about the quality of written English, and does it matter if somebody isn't a fluent English speaker when they submit their application?
Good question. So we work hard not to penalise for that, not to take marks off. So the marks aren't about accuracy of grammar and language. And I make sure when I'm inducting the judges that the judges understand that. And that if there are entries from people for whom English isn't their mother tongue, that we take that into account, and that's, you know, we say we don't penalise. But equally, we have to be able to understand. So, you know, there's a level. We have had some interviews with finalists where we've had translators in order, because people have wanted it to be, you know, us to have accuracy. And there was one example where an organisation entered for a project award, and they entered in the room, and a number of whom did English and tell it to us, and we will work on it. Hello, Katie, you there?
Hello, sorry about that. I just got booted out.
Okay, fine. I was just about to try and questions for myself. I'm glad you're back.
Hopefully you can hear me okay, can you?
Yes.
Sorry about that, the joys of the internet. We will carry on. There's a few more questions here that we'll try and get through in the last couple of minutes. How long would the Quality Professional of the Year nomination would have to have been chartered for? Is there a minimum requirement for the chartership?
No. Could have been yesterday.
Okay. Estelle has emphasised on the need of providing an organisation chart. The challenge that we are facing is the limited number of pages for the submission category. And what is the letter font size that you would recommend?
On the slides, I guess, is what people are talking about, because it's number of words in the entry.
Yeah.
All I'd say is make sure that the judges can read it. So we do like to see a fairly busy, fairly full slide, because then we know that you've thought about what it is that the judges need to see, and have put effort into giving us as much information as possible. What I wouldn't want is something where I have to read it with a magnifying glass. So we need to be able to read it reasonably well on A4 without having to, you know, enlarge. But you can make it quite full. This isn't a slide where you need to make it look beautiful. It isn't one that you would have at a conference where you present, where you need to have some white space. This can be full.
Wonderful.
And we limit the number of slides, obviously, for a reason, because we need to have this, to give everyone the same opportunity. And in the first year, that rule wasn't quite so clearly expressed. We did have some people who sent in like 100 slides, and so it means that everyone has the same difficulty or the same ease. It's the same challenge.
Just a couple of questions I've seen that are coming up in the chat rather than in the Q&A box, but just to be clear, oh, sorry about that. Just to be clear that you don't have to be a member of CQI or IRCA to apply, apart from for the Quality Professional of the Year award. So yes, non-members are also welcome to apply. And of course, the all-important deadline for the awards, which is the 2nd of March. So the midnight on the 2nd of March is when the applications close for entries. So I think we've probably got time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Do the points given for evidence include both the writing in the context session and on the attachments as well? We give points for evidence. So we give points for the approach and we give points for the results. And we do that for each of the criteria. So the categories that are using the competency framework, context, governance, assurance, improvement, leadership, we will give points on context, because the context is not just a description of how things are, it's a description of how things are, how the quality system fits in, and therefore how the degree to which the quality system makes sense of, relates, can support the context that it's within. And then the last question will pop in, just mindful of the time. So the awards is about evidence, what we've done so far, rather than about vision.
The evidence piece is about evidence, but in your approach, and certainly in your context, it would be really nice if you gave vision. And it would be useful if you told us how you will measure whether that vision has been achieved, even if you can't indicate a result against that right at this point in time.
Lovely. Well,
so we would give marks for that in approach, yes. I mean, without a vision, without understanding what this is intended to deliver at some point, then it's likely to be something that will score full marks.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's probably all we've got time for today, but we'd like to thank you all, our wonderfully international audience, for joining us, and apologies for my slight technical woes. I've just popped the email address into the chat box, which is internationalqualityawards@quality.org. So if you've got any questions that we didn't have a chance to get to today, then please do email us there and we will make sure that we follow up.
Yeah,
but we will also share the webinar and the slides with everybody who attended later on this week, and it will be available on our website. Thank you ever so much to Estelle for that really informative
presentation. Please enter.
And yes, please enter by the 2nd of March. The end.
Give the judges a hard job.
Thank you all ever so much. Have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Okay, and hopefully see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.